My daughter is 16 years old and in high school. I noticed recently that she's been behaving in a bad manner, constantly commenting on other people's looks, belongings, calling them stuff that isn't cool, and just being insensitive. It's like she lost a filter or something, because usually she's polite, but my wife suspected that our daughter's sudden misbehavior occurred after she started hanging out with new girls from the school. Basically the mean type, and have picked on their behavior. I've sat with my daughter and had many discussions about how her behavior has been negatively affecting everyone around her. Our housemaid is the person most affected here, and my daughter has chosen her to be her target for hair, clothes, etiquette, criticism. She has complained about our daughter calling her offensive names like filthy and gross for cleaning certain areas in our house. I took a stand and explicitly told my daughter I'd punish her if she ever said stuff like that to our housemaid again. Last week my daughter had a party to go to. Earlier that day she called our housemaid filthy, so I grounded her by not letting her go to the party. She threw a fit and called our housemaid a liar, saying she never called her that. That was the end of it. Days later my daughter came to me saying she couldn't find her iPhone after looking everywhere. She asked me to call her number and I did. My wife and I were stunned to discover that the iPhone was ringing inside our housemaid's bag. I had in confrontation with her immediately, and she denied and cried, saying she never touched the phone nor had any idea how it got there. I noticed my daughter calling her thief repeatedly, so I told her to stop and go to her room. I checked the indoor camera before continuing the argument and saw my daughter place her iPhone inside our housemaid's bag. I was livid. I apologized to the housemaid and gave her the rest of the day off. I then showed the video to my daughter and she was absolutely speechless. I said what she did was immoral and straight up offensive, to tamper with that poor woman's livelihood over a petty party she couldn't go to. I told her she was grounded and will have to spend the night in the backyard. She is a germaphobe. But she cried, begging me to not make her sleep with the dirt, insects, and hot temp. I refused to discuss it or I'd make it 2 nights. My wife said I should go easy on her, but I said calling people filthy and accusing them of stealing wasn't okay. In fact, it was the absolute worst. I then went through with my punishment. The reason I chose this punishment was because of the fact that my daughter says she is a germaphobe and used this as excuse to insult others' hygiene and appearance. Our backyard has dirt and bugs in it, and this kind of things get her uncomfortable, but other than that the backyard is 100% safe. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years now. Every year at the end of summer, my boyfriend's family has a beach trip. They have a cute cottage that they go to visit a few times a year. Last year I was unable to join, but this year I was able to make it. I've met his family before many times and we get along well, so I was looking forward to it. While I was packing, I was sure to include nicer dresses in case we went out, and even included a more modest bikini than I would usually wear. This one is still a bikini, but is full coverage unlike my others. I know his family can be a little more conservative, so I kept that in mind when packing. I even went over everything I packed with my boyfriend. On the trip was my BF and I, his younger brother, his older brother, his sister-in-law, and his parents. The first day went by really well. Our flight didn't have any issues. We unpacked, got settled, and all went out for dinner. The next day we had planned to go out on the boat. So I put on my bikini and had a cover up. No one said anything to me as we were leaving, or even when we were on the boat. I spent the whole day in my bikini without a single comment. It wasn't until that night I realized people had an issue with it. We were all drinking on the boat, with the exception of my BFS sister-in-law because she's pregnant. And we continued drinking when we got back. So after dinner, we were all pretty wasted. When we were talking about our time on the boat, my BFS dad made a comment about how everyone was staring at me because of my slutty bikini. I was embarrassed and just laughed it off, but then everyone else chimed in to comment on it. His mom laughed and said it was fine, that she would wear nothing if she were young again. But then his younger brother said that I basically was wearing nothing. I defended myself and said it was the most conservative suit I had. And then his older brother said that it didn't leave anything to the imagination, and that if he were single he would have tried to steal me away. That comment made me pretty uncomfortable, and I could tell it made his wife uncomfortable too. I asked if she would wear bikinis on the trip, and my BFS dad interrupted and said that she did, but it was different. My BF just laughed along with all of this, didn't even see anything wrong with it. When I told him to say something, he said that I did look like I was trying to get dick down. Well, that comment was the last straw. I went to our room. I wanted to leave early after all that. But we only had a few days, so I just pushed it in the back of my mind and kept to myself the rest of our trip. I know they were just joking, but what they said really bothered me and made me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure why my BF doesn't get that. He just keeps saying that they were joking around. But it obviously wasn't very funny to me, so now he's saying I ruined the trip by moping around the rest of the time. My partner and I want to be married, but we don't care much for the idea of having a wedding. We wanted to elope, but my mom has been telling me since I was 16, and had never even had a boyfriend, that she wanted to see me get married and she would basically never forgive me if I eloped. I do like the idea of my family being there to celebrate with us. But I hate the idea of spending money we don't have on this huge party just so that our relationship can change in nothing but name and legal benefits. And for various reasons, it doesn't make sense for us to wait until we can afford a wedding to get married. We wanted to keep it small, preferably under $3,000, which is honestly more than I'd like to spend. But we have to be realistic. We had planned on having it in my in-laws' backyard, but even that was more money and effort than I was willing to put forth. I was stressed and feeling like I was out of options, so one day, I vented to my mom. She seemed really excited about the idea of helping me plan a wedding. It was kind of a red flag when she said, "My mom didn't help me plan my wedding. Let me live vicariously through you." But still, I agreed. She seemed really excited to help me find a venue. I was not excited, because I have not been excited about one single step in the wedding process, and I just want it to be over. About a week later, I found out that this really great park in our city that my partner loves does weddings for an extremely small fee. I emailed the event coordinator and found out that the date we want is available. I told my mom, and her reaction was, "So I guess you don't need my help finding a place, then?" And every time I talk about it, she says the same thing. She has always talked about how shitty it is to guilt trip someone, but I feel like that's exactly what she's trying to do. I honestly can't tell whether or not I've done something wrong. Like, I'm not sure if I implied that I would only get married in a place she helped me find. I don't feel like trying to take action on my own wedding is that great of an offense, but I can tell she's upset. I want to make her feel better, but at the same time, I don't want to change our plans again just so that she can feel involved. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years. He's a good heart and is normally rational, but his one issue is that he expects to accompany me in every occasion no matter how big or small. He even went with me to my ex-boyfriend's funeral after days of begging. Now my best friend got married few days ago. It was very small and only close family and friends were invited. My boyfriend couldn't come because of the +1 rule. He pitched a hissy fit saying my best friend has no respect for my relationship and was shocked when he learned that I was still going to attend. He told me that if he can't go then I'm expected to not go as well, but that is my best friend and I had to respect her rules. He gave me an ultimatum: either we go together or I stay home with him. I ended up going cause again I respected my friend's rules. He was angry with me and kept calling the entire 2-hour drive, then stopped. Later I got a text from his friend telling me my boyfriend, got into an accident and was taken to the hospital. I freaked out. He gave me the address and I had to leave the wedding and told my friends why. I was crying the entire drive home and kept calling his friend but got no response. I arrived to the hospital and asked about my boyfriend and they checked and told me he wasn't there. My anxiety reached 160% as I kept calling his friends one by one. I just went home and there he was, along with his friend. He saw me and said that he was sorry, but this was the only he can get me home after I left him alone. After the initial shock, I just blew up yelling at him about lying and making me leave my friend's wedding, and having me literally go to the hospital and freaking out cause of him. I kicked his friend out and we got into an argument. He kept talking about how much I love him, thus I left, which is my own doing, not his, and he was just trying to see if I really chose my friend's wedding over him. He then argued that my friend caused this and I shouldn't agree with her to exclude him. I said what he did was horrible and called him horrible and then went to my room. It was awful cause my friends kept calling to check in on him cause they thought he was really at the hospital. He said I overreacted and that I yelled at the wrong person. He has a history of mental health issues but got better the past few months. He also had a recent death in his family which really affected his health generally.